Hello everyone, I'm Norman Wildberger, and this is just a very short introduction to two important videos, very important videos that have Howard Crowhurst talk about some really important mathematical discoveries of a historical nature that he made. And I just want to introduce them. So Howard Crowhurst is a Englishman who's living in France and Brittany around Carnac, which is a very famous place with all these famous alignments of thousands of megalithic stones. But Howard has discovered, in addition to all of these remarkable things, two spectacular configurations. And we might call them the life triangles, and they're at a place called Manio, where there's a giant menhir or megalith called the Manio Giant. And Howard has been very intensively studying these things. He's made theodolite measurements, and he's isolated these two remarkable triangles. So they're both 3, 4, 5 triangles. And as far as we know, they are the first examples of 3, 4, 5 triangles in history. This is a very momentous kind of thing. And we're talking about 4,000 or 5,000 BC, so maybe 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. And the two triangles, we could call them the conception triangle and the fertility triangle. And you'll see that these names are very apt ones. My colleague Daniel Mansfield says that we should think about this as perhaps some kind of Neolithic family planning. And it's really quite remarkable that astronomy and mathematics and biology come together in these ancient configurations that Howard has discovered. So this is very exciting stuff. It's not well known. It really deserves major international recognition. And so it's a pleasure for me to be able to have Howard talk to us directly and show us directly these remarkable things that he's discovered.
Okay, so here we're at the Manio Giant, which is the largest. It's called the Manio. It's the largest standing stone in Carnac. It's on a high point. This is one of the highest points in Carnac. And so now it's surrounded by trees, but it wasn't beforehand. This is fairly rocky land here, so you see the trees grow and then they die because their roots can't go anywhere. And so this stone was visible from all over Carnac, and it's in fact a sort of central positioning point. Most of the major sites in Carnac, major points of the Carnac alignments, the center of the beginning of the alignments, and the tumulus Saint-Michel, which is a massive stone, massive tumulus we're going to go and see. They are exactly positioned with respect to this stone. So it's
7,000 years ago or whatever, this would have been visible from all of these other
all
sites.
All of Carnac, yeah, that's right. It's a central point, and it's not exactly on the hilltop. It's slightly down from the hilltop, and on the hilltop there's another monument here, which is a quadrilateral shape. It's not a square shape. If we advance and look at it, you see this monument here. It's made from small stones, and these two lines converge. That's this side here is the northern. That's the northern side of the quadrilateral. This is the southern side. And these two lines actually converge. There's 10 meters between the two stones here, so the width is 10 meters here, and at the other end it's only about 7 meters. So the two lines actually converge to a point. And that point, we're on a sort of hilltop here, and that point is the end of the plateau. Once you get to that point, it then goes downhill. Okay? And at the head of this quadrilateral, there's a kind of stone circle shape, and you have a perpendicular line, so the thing could be like a small model of the alignments. The Lescon alignments we saw earlier had a perpendicular line, north-south, Cromlech on head converging to a point, so it could be a sort of small model of that, but it's not orientated to cardinal directions. Now here we have a line which moves off a bit. It looks curved, it moves off a bit, but if you stand here, you will see that it curves from one stone, but it's very straight. I've done a whole study about this because it's very interesting to see that it's perfectly straight at one point and then it deviates. And I've done a geometrical study about the whole thing, you know.
You've got a book there. Can you show us?
Yeah,
show us,
this book
is
is in French, unfortunately. It's not in English. It's called The Science of the Ancients, and it's about this site, the Manio in Carnac. But I'm just wondering, do I have a... Well, I've got a sort of plan here. This is the quadrilateral here. That's the southern side, that's the northern side, and I've included this slight deviation at the end of the line, and then we have the standing stone, and there are different things we're going to go and see here. The standing stone, which is the giant here, but there's a recumbent stone here and a square stone here, and we're going to see how these stones actually trace out precise geometry with respect to...
I'm very interested in these triangles that you have here. So there's a 3, 4, 5 triangle there, and I see a 5, 12, 13 triangle there.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. And there's another 3, 4, 5...
exactly. Here we have the 5 side of the 3, 4, 5 triangle on the east-west line, and this is the 4 side. Now this is very interesting because you have a 4 to 5 relationship. And the measurements here are interesting because this triangle, this southern triangle, which I discovered in fact because this stone was not known, and so I actually cleared out some of the forest here.
Oh, great.
And I discovered this stone because I was quite certain that there should be something here.
There.
Yeah.
But none of these are aligned with cardinal directions.
Now, this is east-west.
This is east-west.
This is east-west, right? And this one's north-south.
And that's north-south, okay.
And this line here is the angle of a 5, 12, 13 triangle with respect to east-west.
With respect to east-west.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This line here. Okay.
So these people knew about 5, 12, 13, very likely.
Well, for me it's obvious. It's obvious. But I'll show it you bit by bit because these look just like a pile of stones. It's very difficult to... and when you come and see them for a short space of time, you don't see the details. But I've been coming here for many years, and bit by bit, things have sort of sunk in, you know, and you see things. So what I'm going to show you now are the details which enabled me to make this plan.
Fabulous.
Okay? So the first detail, in fact, is down here. You can keep filming if you like.
I'll keep filming.
Right.
Yep.
Because if you look at this line, you'll see that further down the line there are 2 stones which are much bigger than the others. Okay, so we'll go towards them. So we have these 2 stones here which are much taller. They're 2 tallest stones, and they're rather special, you know, they seem to make an opening.
Howard, how deep are these things sunk in?
These 2 stones, I would say about that much.
Half a meter maybe?
Yeah, generally about a fifth of their height.
A fifth of their height.
But some of them are actually just placed on the ground. Some of the stones have square bases and they're just placed on the ground, so they're not in the ground at all.
Oh, okay.
Some can be up to 2 meters underground. It varies. Yeah. And but you can see that these 2 are clearly linked together. You know, they make a kind of opening, and they're in a... But what we're going to go and see now, if we go inside here, and we stand here approximately, if you want to turn around in the other direction and film.
Oh, yeah.
If you go down a bit, you can see that the opening actually makes a kind of opening where the giant standing stone fits in.
Framing that
it's
giant
framing
thing.
it,
Yeah,
exactly.
Lovely.
Now what's interesting is that that is the exact angle of a 3, 4, 5 triangle with respect to cardinal direction. And it's also sunrise at winter solstice.
So winter solstice, the sun is coming...
The sun rises directly behind the giant standing stone, which means that the shadow of the giant stone penetrates this. I use the word penetrate on purpose because obviously the stone has a masculine phallic image, and this is a very feminine form. All right, and so the fact that the shadow comes into this form at winter solstice, just when the sun is at its lowest, we call it in French Noël, which comes from Greek novo elios, the new sun. Right, so it's very interesting to see that this is linked to that particular moment. But of course, I say it's on the exact angle of a 3-4-5 triangle. Now that only happens at this latitude. If you go further north or further south, you don't get the solstice on a 3-4-5 triangle. Further north, the angle is greater. Further south, the angle is less. And it's only at this latitude that you get that particular coincidence. Now, I say only at this latitude in 5000 BC, because the sun has slightly changed, the Earth's tilt has slightly changed. We've gone from 24 and a bit now to 23.44. So there's this slight change in the angle of the Earth's tilt. The Milankovitch cycle, 41,000 years. It's not precession.
It's not precession.
No, it's precession is the circular movement, which is about 26,000 years. The change in the Earth's tilt is a 41,000 year cycle. A lot of people confuse and say, well, the sky's got nothing to do with present, and they confuse the precessional cycle of 26,000 years, which points to the stars. And so the pole star will go do a big circle. And so if you're looking at the stars, then the sky changes dramatically between minus 5000 BC and now. The star positions change dramatically. But the solstice positions, the sun's position on the horizon, that changes according to the change in the Earth's tilt. Right? And that change is very slight. About 0.7 degrees here since building, which means that you can come here at winter solstice and see the sun directly behind. I've got a photo of it here. There you go. Those are the two opening of the stones. Here's, see, I've measured all these things with a theodolite. That's the exact angle of a 3-4-5 triangle to where that rod is on the stone there. Okay. So all this geometry has been done with a theodolite. It's perfectly precise. And well, I'll come back to that later. So that's something, you know, Professor Tom had realized this. He'd realized that there was a relationship between the solstice and the 3-4-5 triangle. But when Professor Tom was studying here, the dating was much more recent. Archaeology at that point said that Carnac dated to about 1800 BC or 1000. And so he says at one point in a BBC documentary, this will be perfect. We're only a few kilometers away from it being perfect. But the error, he thought, was linked to the people, but the error was linked to us. The dating that they'd been giving to Professor Tom for him to do his astronomical calculations was wrong. And had he known that the dating, as it is given now, is 4,500 BC, and he would have realized that it was exactly the latitude.
Fabulous.
Which brings one to the clear conclusion that the site was chosen, that people actually came here to build this site because of that specific thing. Because solstice is when the sun moves the least. Solstice means the sun stops. It's the sun's station. So day after day you can see the sunrise at the same spot. Whereas if you look at equinox, for example, around equinox, from one day to the next, the sun moves by its own distance on the horizon every day. Whereas at solstice, for about 10 days, it's at the same spot. Because it moves up and then it moves back. So like a pendulum, it stops and then it comes back. right? And so it stopped for about 10 days. And so here, if you look towards sunrise at winter solstice, and then with a 12 knotted rope, you put your 5 side on the solstice angle, and then you've got your 3 and your 4 side, you get the perfect cardinal directions. So the latitude is a perfect latitude if you want to work out north, south, east, west.
Mm.
Do you get me?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very, isn't it?
Mm.
So it's very practical. One of the most difficult things in architecture is getting the architect's ideas made in reality. How to transfer what he wants exactly to people who are doing the nitty-gritty, you know. And here, the orientation is quite easy once you've got the solstice angle.
Fabulous.
So, of course, if we have this orientation, we may say, well, is the corner marked out there something?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something in the corner?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go and have a look.
Let's go have a look.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've come now to the spot which is where the corner of that 3-4-5 triangle will be. And here's what we find. This massive recumbent stone here, which makes a lot of people think of a pregnant woman, a big stomach, or a rounded...
So is this a natural stone that's just here?
No, it's been placed
It's
there.
been placed here.
Yeah.
How do we know that?
Because if you do, if you can do seismic, you hit it, and when the echo comes back, you can find out if it's linked to the bedrock or not. In the time it takes for the echo to come back.
Okay.
Okay, so you can test stones without actually digging around them.
Uh-huh.
You can test the stones to see if they're part of the bedrock or not.
So, for example, this one here
Could be part of the bedrock.
could be part of the bedrock, but
Yeah.
but this one here, you reckon? And
not.
it looks like there's some grooves and maybe some
Right.
markings or
Right,
something.
you can see the rounded grooves here. There's another one on this side. Right here, the rounded groove there,
Yep.
which give a circular shape to it.
Mm-hmm.
And they reinforce the roundedness of the thing. Okay? But if you come on this side now, you will see that this side isn't particularly round, it's fairly straight. And if you look in the ground here, you see, it carries on with the stone here. And then if you look up, you're exactly in the doorway up there. Can you see that?
Yep.
You can see the 2 stones where we were,
Mm-hmm.
the opening. That's a perfect north-south. So the north-south side of the triangle is marked in the ground by this stone, Maybe there are other stones under here, we don't know, it's never been. But this is the exact, this point, I've done all this on a theodolite, this point here is perfect south with respect to the centre of that opening.
Mm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you come and stand here, you'll see that there's a very straight side here,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, raise your camera and look.
Okay.
That is pointing exactly to the standing stone.
Yep.
On an east-west orientation.
East-west orientation.
So that's east-west, that's north-south, and the diagonal we saw is the hypotenuse of a 3-4-5 triangle.
3-4-5.
Okay?
That's
So
great.
the corner is actually marked out. So we have 3 points marking out the 3-4-5 triangle. The 3 points are marked by the giant standing stone, by this cornerstone, and by the doorway up there.
So this 3-4-5 triangle is fascinating. I think we recognize that the Egyptians, had a good understanding of this. So do you reckon this is the earliest incarnation of the 3-4-5 triangle that we know about?
As far as I know, yeah.
we know about.
As far as I know, right.
And we're talking about 4,000, 5,000 BC.
That's it, yeah, 5,000 BC. That's the oldest we know about, yeah. Although a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing as well, you see, is the distance, because between there's a specific point on that standing stone which is the exact angle of the 345, and so the distance here is 15 megalithic rods, 20 megalithic rods, and 25 megalithic rods on the 5 sides. So the actual measurements here correspond to Professor Tom's megalithic rod, which is 2.5 times the megalithic yard. 2.0736 meters is the distance. So there's 15 of them here, so approximately 31 meters, something like that. I can't remember. Well, I've got the exact measurements here if anybody wants them, but 31.15 meters north-south. So it's 15 by 20 by 25 megalithic rods. So it's measured and orientated. And what's another interesting thing is we saw how at winter solstice the standing stone's shadow penetrated through the female form. Well, 9 months later, it's equinox, the September equinox after winter solstice. 9 months later, September equinox. At September equinox, this is east-west, and so the shadow of the standing stone hits this one, which is like a female form ready to give birth.
Yeah.
So it's as if there's some kind of geometrical, cosmic explanation of life. It's very interesting.
Some birth cycle encoded in this geometry and the rocks.
Yeah, maths was probably, not as separated from everyday life as it may be now, And the other interesting thing is to see that there's a kind of opening on this stone here, right? There's a sort of shape to it, and its long shape is here. And in fact, the whole stone can be seen as a 3-4-5 triangle because this angle here is also winter solstice. And so the long axis of this stone is parallel to the hypotenuse of the big triangle, and it's 1/20th the scale. So if you have 25 megalithic rods there, you have 1.25 megalithic rods here.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a 20th, and it's east-west, north-south. Right.